Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Paul Fahy. I'm the Artistic Director of Galway International Arts Festival. I'm delighted to welcome you here to the O'Donoghue Theatre at NUI Galway, who are our education partner and long-standing supporter of the festival, and also our associate on First Thought Talks. We have a great couple of weekends lined up with talks beginning on, well, we're starting today, which is our midweek. We have another one at 4 p.m. with Emer Noon, but we've got an action-packed, jam-packed programme on this coming Saturday and Sunday rather, and again next weekend. So we hope you'll just see your faces at some more of these. So I am thrilled to be here with our colleagues and our good pals from Chicago, who we're delighted to be able to welcome back to Galway this year.
Thank you for having us.
It's our delight. So, you know, there's my colleague John Crumlich and I often chat about kind of key sort of seminal moments that kind of mark, that punctuate, you know, big time, you know, key points, I suppose, of the festival's history. And one of those, without question, was Steppenwolf's Irish premiere in 2000 with Sideman. And I think what it did that year was it elevated the kind of international theatre we were seeing. And I've been telling you kind of privately and off and on over emails over the last little while about the sort of significance of that moment and how our audiences just took Steppenwolf into their hearts. And you know, you've got a huge fan base here, so it's such a thrill to be able to welcome you back. So before we start the conversation, I'll just make some introductions and I'll refer to my notes on this. So I'll just start, first of all, about Steppenwolf. So Steppenwolf are one of the great ensembles that first began performing in the mid-1970s in the basement of Highland Park Church in Illinois, and were the ambitious brainchild of three high school and college friends, Jeff Perry, Terry Kinney and Gary Sinese, all familiar names, I'm sure. Fast forward to 40 years and the Steppenwolf have become the United States' premier ensemble, redefining the landscape of acting and performance. The ensemble has grown into a 49 members strong ensemble who represent a remarkable generation of actors, directors and playwrights. Groundbreaking productions over all those years, from The Grapes of Wrath to August Osage County, and including True West, which we're delighted to present as part of the festival this year, and many other accolades that have included the National Medal of Arts, 12 Tony Awards, and have made the theatre the legends that they are. Steppenwolf's artistic force remains rooted in the original vision of its founders, an artist-driven theatre whose vitality is defined by its sharp appetite for groundbreaking and innovative new work, and that continues. And so to introduce our guests, Glenn Davies and Audrey Francis are recently appointed as the co-artistic directors of Steppenwolf in, I think, this month last year, if I'm not mistaken, in July 21. And their appointment marks the first time co-artistic leaders have been formally elected by Steppenwolf's 49-member ensemble. So we might talk a little bit more about how all that kind of works out. Both are deeply rooted in the Chicago acting community and have built their foundations of their careers in that great city. And they each, if I'm correct in my research, both started in 2017 through the Steppenwolf School. Audrey became a Steppenwolf Ensemble member in 2017 and has performed in over 10 productions with the company. And she also has an acclaimed film career, and we're looking forward to their vision as she and Glenn take over as their joint artistic directors. Originally from Chicago, Glenn is an accomplished actor and producer, and he has garnered widespread acclaim for his performance in world premiere performance of their other ensemble member, Rajiv Joseph's incredible show, played Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo, there's a bit of a mouthful, which opened in LA and transferred to Broadway, where he starred opposite Robin Williams. And then Brooke Flanagan on my right is the managing director of Steppenwolf. And Brooke had worked in Steppenwolf some years ago, but took a little bit of sabbatical for 10 years and worked with the Chicago Shakespeare Company and did some great groundbreaking work with that company, including a great project of the opening of the Yard Theatre, which is this incredible new space in downtown Chicago, right on the pier, if I remember correctly. So you're all very welcome to Galway, and it's really thrilling to have you. So I want to kick off just by talking to you both about your recent appointment last July. So it's I suppose it's a significant moment because it's the first time two members have been selected as our joint artistic directors. So how did that kind of come about? And was that like, did you have to do a joint pitch for that job, or how does the I suppose the Democratic Republic of Steppenwolf work in terms of choosing who takes the baton?
She always does. She always just looks at me. It was. It's funny when you just now you said it's the first time two people have been formally elected to as artistic directors. There was a brief period. Jeff Perry, one of the founders, told us that there were two people who were informally elected to or served as artistic directors. But I think that for us, it's such a big job at Steppenwolf because unlike most other theaters which have the staff and the board, you also have this ensemble of amazing artists that want to be involved with the company to varying degrees at any given time. So there's just a lot to manage. And so when we were when our last artistic director, Anna Shapiro, was stepping down, the company was doing a formal search for who would be the next artistic director. And Audrey and I, the company did a vote, and Audrey and I got the most votes. I think she outpaced me by one or two, maybe. And then Audrey and I have been talking, and then we just said, hey, what if we did this together? And so we decided to present ourselves to the rest of the ensemble as a team to do it. And everyone said, it was unanimous, everyone said, yes, that would be great. So that's how it was actually quite simple.
And so has that been the tradition, though, in terms of finding the new artistic leader? Do the company always look within to the ensemble?
Yes, historically, and hopefully for the future, I think the ideal is that the artistic director will always come from the ensemble. This is the first time I think that it was a really open conversation that involved as much of the ensemble as it did, which is, I think, a process that we would hope to continue.
Yeah. And so then how closely had you worked together? I know you've started a few shows together, but how closely, or kind of artistically, had you collaborated previously, or have you had kind of similar interests or similar kind of ideas in terms of how you'd want to take the company forward?
So funny, I thought you said, how close in age are you? And I was like, oh, I don't even know how old she is.
I'm way younger.
That's fair, that's fair. I don't think, so we've done one play together. We did this play, so we came into the company as ensemble members in the same season, in the same year, 2017. And I think 2018 we did a play together, or was it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did a play called You Got Older by Claire Barron. We did that together in 2018. And I think that was the only time we actually formally worked together. But I had seen her in quite a few plays at Steppenwolf, and so I was a big fan of hers. Less of her personality, but more of her work. But yeah, so that was where we sort of crossed. And we both went to the school at Steppenwolf. That's how we initially got our start in the company.
And what's the selection process? How does somebody become, or how is somebody invited to be an ensemble member?
That's a very provocative question. So historically, I'm going to tell you every version that I have heard. I think it started with friends and then extended to who was having sex with those friends, potentially. But they were having sex with very talented people, I think.
That's a good answer.
And then
you should ask Laura Glenn, our stage manager. She give you all the dirty details.
Yeah. She's got all the hot goss. And then I think I'll tell you my version of it that I know that I think everybody will have a different perspective. But I think it eventually progressed on to what for me felt like a very mysterious process that happened behind closed doors, where at that moment the artistic director seemed to elicit the feedback of specific ensemble members. And the way that an ensemble member is invited in, I think, has historically been mysterious and cryptic. And that's actually something Glenn and I are hoping to codify a bit more so that we can all, as ensemble members and the staff and the company and the board, understand who and why we're inviting people into the ensemble, because they're an ensemble member for life. And so it's something that's important to us, that it's not just that they're a cultural fit, but that they're additive to our culture, and that we genuinely believe this person helps lay the groundwork for the next 50 years of ensemble. So what we hope it looks like is something very similar to the process and how we were chosen to be artistic directors, which is that there's a lot of conversation around the artists. There's a lot of voices and investment in those artists who are invited in.
And so Steppenwolf are unusual in having that ensemble member sort of format, I guess. I mean, there aren't a huge amount of other companies I can think of. You know, people often compare Steppenwolf and Druid in Galway, who are, you know, they have a smaller ensemble, but they're often mentioned in the same breath. But what's the responsibility of, or the expectation of an ensemble member when you join? So, say for example, you know, I read out a few very well-known names now of founding members, and you know, Galway audiences were very familiar with John Mahoney, who was one of our most frequent visitors. You know, and a lot of those people have become big TV stars or big film stars. So what's their the return that they need to bring back to Steppenwolf and back to Chicago? Like, are they expected to do a show every number of years, or what's the kind of commitment?
Mm-hmm. Be good.
Be good. That's always a good start.
Yeah. Don't suck. I think that for the most part, historically, it's been sort of, at least Jeff Perry, our founder, one of our founders would say, Steppenwolf has been all privileges, no responsibility. And so sort of meaning like, hey, you're invited into the company, and whenever you want to be on stage, or whenever you want to direct, or whenever you want to write something, just let us know. Or we might reach out to you and say, hey, could you do something? And I think since we've started, we've been in conversation. One of the silver linings of the pandemic was that we were all at home sort of talking about not doing plays, not doing TV shows or movies. We're all on Zoom in conversation with each other in the ensemble in many ways like they've never been before, or haven't been since they were a small group of artists. We were talking about what does it mean to be an ensemble member. So we had all these to varying degrees conversations around the ethos of the company and what the responsibilities are of the company members. And I think that to at least right now, going into our next season, we've sort of codified a document per se that sort of lists out when we invite someone into the company, what is exactly we're asking of them, what is it they're asking of us. I think sort of before then, the sort of, to answer your question in a sentence, the thing that I was always told by other ensemble members, that they were told by Martha Levy, who was the longtime artistic director before Anna, was that at least one of my friends said to me, she said, when I came into the company, Martha said to me, we ask you to put us first, and in return we'll put you first, essentially. So make us a priority, and we'll do the same for you. And so it was sort of an unspoken agreement that I'm going to come back and do shows. I'm going to come back and do the gala or talk to students or whatever it is you ask of me, and in return you're going to consider me every season or every other season to do a show. So I think that was the sort of informal language around what the responsibilities were.
And Martha, of course, who sadly is now deceased, had travelled to Galway, I think, on 4 or 5 occasions in the early noughties, as what they say. But I remember hearing her talking a lot about kind of, her commitment to the ensemble, and also to sort of this idea of a civic duty, I guess, that the Steppenwolf had towards Chicago. So she was really an incredible person, and I know you worked very closely with her, Brooke, as well. But so just to shift the conversation just a little bit, one of the incredible things that happened, I thought, during the pandemic, building and construction and all that closed down here in Ireland during the pandemic. So very little happened. Whereas you guys rolled up your sleeves and built a brand new theatre.
We sure did. So the world shut down, and everyone was writing articles about how live theater could, pivot to be holograms or people in different cubes sitting together. Tom Pearl, who's our director of production, who's here, who led our building project brilliantly over many years. We were determined to keep going. And luckily the governor, so the state of Illinois got to determine what was an essential service or not during the pandemic. And construction was deemed an essential service. So everyone was in quarantine. I came onto the job and began to partner as a steward of the ensemble in this position, the executive director position, and worked with Tom, our director of production, and our team of builders and the subs to keep this project going. The vision for the theater, as you mentioned, started back with Martha Levy and her executive director, David Hawkinson, back in the early 2000s. Our company had a permanent home that we moved into in 1991. Randy Arney, who is here as the director and a cast member of True West, was actually our artistic director for that first permanent manifestation of our brand and architecture. And the reality was that we had grown out of it quickly. We didn't have the ability to have spaces that could activate different frames for our work. So we have a beautiful proscenium house that seats about 515 people. But what we were looking for was another venue that would have scalability of size. And also room to hold our education programs. We have an incredible partnership with the city of Chicago and our schools, and realized that we didn't have dedicated space for that. And also we had become a home because we had come up through, as you said, performing in a basement of a church, or really being part of that storefront movement, as we call it in Chicago, of theaters. We wanted to be able to give back. So Martha began a dream of a complex that would take effectively this open parking lot next to our extant building that was opened in '91 and build an education center and a new theater. And when Anna came in, she shifted that with the team. We worked with a company called Charcoal Blue out of the UK, who you might be familiar with. They're brilliant theater designers. They did The Yard as well, the theater you mentioned that we built on Navy Pier. And together we created this beautiful new home, expanded home, that has given us a contiguous campus with 3 theaters, a small 80-seat black box, the original 515-seat proscenium theater, and now we have a beautiful new theater in the round. Which is quite common, I think, in Europe, but not so much in the States. So we're really excited with the new playground, and it was amazing to see it come together over the course of just a crazy, crazy time.
And it looks so beautiful. There's a great couple of little videos on your website, which I'd encourage people to look at. It's a really beautiful, beautiful building. What's the capacity there?
400.
400.
It's a bit of a flexible space. There are 4 VOMs that lead into what's more of an oval shape. And 2 of the sides, the east and west side of the theater, the seats are a series of platforms. So those VOMs can be closed to increase the capacity up to about 500, and then they can be fully open to create almost a 3/4 thrust, very large thrust. So,
excellent. And we were chatting a little bit last night after the show just about some of the challenges of the theatre in the round will kind of bring from a design point of view, from a directing point of view. So what have you in mind for that particular space over the next couple of years? Nod the head over there to Glenn.
I have a dream of a play that is a huge ensemble of 9 artists who gather together for a dinner, which is actually a play very much about, I'm being cryptic because we haven't gotten the rights or announced it, but it's about what it means to gather in space and breathe the same air and be in the flesh and blood with people, and how we have forgotten what it means to gather and what the idea of ritual means, and that being in conversation with our mortality. And that's part of what it means to be alive, is to share the same air with another human being. And so that story existing around within other bodies, holding that story in space, with that space feeling almost haunted because of the recent death of someone, to me is a spiritual experience. And it's the thing that I think theater brings me the closest to God in that way. It is my church. When I see human beings live through extraordinary moments with each other through honesty and bravery. And so what I see in that space is making the human the star, and our conversation with connection, community, and mortality, and time being such a fleeting thing. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I see in that space, is us being closer together as humans, knowing that we're all running out of time.
And Glenn, you've just performed in that space in one of the first plays there.
No, I did. I wish I did a play called King James in the downstairs theater. It's called. Yeah, so that's our thrust stage. And but in the round theater, we just did The Seagull was our first production there. This beautiful production that I wish I was in, but no, it was great to see that space finally activated after talking about it for 5, 6, 7 years, probably even before that, before we became company members.
And so, as artistic directors now of the company, like, how do you plan on continuing to perform with the company under your tenure, or what are your thoughts on that?
I feel them both looking at me. So I just finished a play, that play King James, we did at Steppenwolf, and then we did it at a theater called the Mark Taper Forum in Los Angeles. And then I go to do a play later this year, another Steppenwolf play that we did a couple of seasons ago called Downstate, that we did it.
The Bruce Norris.
Bruce Norris play. We did it at Steppenwolf, and then we did it at the National in
And
London.
Bruce wrote The Outgoing Tide, didn't he? Did you write The Outgoing Tide? Am I mistaken? I'm trying to think what show we had. Oh, Purple Heart.
Yes, he wrote
Purple Heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Purple Heart was here in 2002.
Yeah. So yes, I am still performing, and the play Audrey was just talking about, is a play that we very much hope that she will be able to direct in the next season. So
That's one of the reasons for the co-artistic director model, though, right? Is so that we have an ensemble of artists who have an artistic home, and the idea that someone would have to abdicate their journey as an artist in order to take this role, it was sort of antithetical to the ethos of the company. So I think that was part of a lot of our conversation, right, about the shared model as well.
and there is a sort of implicit in the role is this notion that you're giving something away, or you're sort of you're sidestepping a part of your career to do this other thing, to do this highly administrative job, which for most artists who have been invited into the company is like, it's a deterrent, right? If we're just being transparent. Most people, the best thing that they could hope for in their career is to be working actively all the time, right? So whether they're a writer or director or an actor, so to have to forfeit that to some degree, or to a large degree, to do a highly administrative job that none of us went to drama school to do, is whenever Tom Pearl will tell you, whenever we run into like a big problem and we're looking at two, option A and option B, and they both suck, I just say, like, look, they didn't teach me none of this shit in drama school. so it's real. And so I think that that's the sort of built-in problematic nature of running an institution and also being an artist. And when you're a director, Audrey's a director, I'm not, but when you're a director, there's more room, there's more give, because you can go direct for 4 weeks and then the show is off and running without you. If you're an actor, you're in it from start to finish. So, and if you're a writer, the problem around running a theater is that you're not writing, you're administrating. So there's this model gave us an opportunity to rethink about how we can lead the company.
And so Steppenwolf are a non-for-profit. And obviously we've all gone through a horrendous couple of years in terms of our business. And
you don't say.
It's so great to be back, and it's brilliant to have our festival back in July and have people sitting down in the same room and breathing the same air, as you say, Audrey. But but that must have been particularly problematic in terms of you're building this presumably many millions of dollars building, and the world kind of crashes down.
Correct. And, the thing is that we have an incredibly generous community. As you mentioned, Martha's commitment to the city of Chicago and to being a cultural citizen, that tending of that garden, proverbially, has yielded a lot of trust and respect on the other side. And so we have felt very much that we are stewarded by the community in which we operate, and never so was that more evident than the pandemic. For the first time in the history of the United States, there was significant investment through the Small Business Administration, not just the National Endowment of the Arts, in our recovery through both the Paycheck Protection Plan grants initially, which they were loans that were forgiven, and then a once in a century bill called the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant, or Save Our Stages, which provided significant relief for us as well. And then to give you an idea, right? We are somewhere between a 16 and a $20 million operation every year. Half of that comes from the generosity of individuals, and the other half comes from earned revenue, including tickets and subscriptions. Last season, we only got $100,000 in earned revenue. Oh. So to make ends meet, the generosity of our donors continued on, but that was in large part because of our commitment with the ensemble and the board to keep producing. So in addition to the building project continuing to go up, we made the commitment to create a season across the course of the pandemic that had live work planned, but we had a phased approach to sort of cascading the cancellation or postponement given where the virus was. And in tandem with that, we made the commitment to commission and produce work for the virtual stage. And
that was at Steppenwolf Now?
That was Steppenwolf Now, yes. And in addition, we also did work for the virtual classroom. And while it didn't make money for the organization, it kept us focused on our mission. Our virtual programming ended up reaching folks in every country in the United States, and I think 25 countries around the world. And our education programming expanded to, we usually serve about 15,000 students in Chicago. We serve 30,000 students around the world. We had students in Ethiopia studying animal farm. I mean, it was amazing. But it was that like sort of belief that our mission lived beyond the manifestation of live production. And I think for us too, because Steppenwolf, we have as I said, a physical manifestation of our company in architecture, right? We have created legacy in the space we have built, but the heartbeat of the company is the artists who call it home. And when the world crashed down around us and our field, for a lot of organizations, it just left bricks and mortar and administrative staff. But for Steppenwolf, the ethos of the ensemble and our commitment to mission was what kept us going. And that was matched by the generosity, amazing generosity of a community who invested in our work.
And at Steppenwolf Now, I mean, we all, like, I suppose we embraced everything we could get in terms of how we kind of feed our cultural habit when we were all locked into our houses. And I guess then as the world reopened, we've all been craving that live return to performance, which is goes without saying. But and it's interesting seeing just colleagues here and how they're looking at continuing and retaining elements of the digital kind of platform, the digital stage. So is Steppenwolf Now a platform you think you might continue?
I would love the option to continue it as an addition that also for me has a lot to do with accessibility. For people who can't see or who may not be able to get into the theater, I would really love if we could maintain an aspect of that. Obviously not the entire suite. I don't think that that's a feasible or realistic option for us. But if we can provide that option for students, for education, and for access, it would be a dream. I do think it will take us a while to get back to that, to figure out how we can do that at the level that we're offering our live shows and also getting our live shows back. So it would be a long-term dream for me.
Can I just say that, can I add, yes, and there were so many times when we were in the shell of this theater being built, right, during the pandemic, where members of the press would say, are you insane? The world is questioning whether live theater is coming back and you're building this new facility. And I think what we all clung to, right, was the fact that we have been, and I remember saying this a lot, we've been gathering around the fire telling our stories for ages, right? There is something about the live interaction between audience and artist. There is something about the ephemeral nature, the way that it changes, right? Last night's production of True West is going to be very different from this evening's. That is irreplaceable. Even though it is like that access to our work was so extraordinary, I think that as an audience member, there is a very different part of me that was engaged through the digital space, and it wasn't fed until I got back into an audience. And I haven't felt that as profoundly as I did over these past 2 years.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was great. Like last night, as the lights were going down, and it was one of the first shows of the festival, and just I've always loved that moment of kind of that unexpected sort of frisson between audience and artist when when the curtains go up or when somebody rounds a corner and goes into a gallery or whatever. That meeting point, and that's I think that's what we've missed so much, despite all the great innovative things that were created during the pandemic times. So it is great to be back.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think right, you all talk about this all the time, right? The repeated relationships with our ensemble, right? That depth of engagement, that's what creates the lightning in a bottle that you talk about on the stage, right? There's a different, like, chemistry there.
Amy Morton is one of our ensemble members, and she has this great quote that truly made me become an actor. And she said that when you're on stage, you have license to do what everybody in the audience has wanted to do 100 times, whether it's kill, love, hate, fuck, or fly. But when you're on stage, you get to do it with no consequences. And so you have to do it fully. And that, to me, is what the Steppenwolf Ensemble does. There is an immense act of faith to get up on stage and live through something with such a level of courage, as though you have to do it as though there is no consequence. And it is so much easier to get to that space when you are in the same ensemble with each other. Because even if I haven't worked with Glenn before, something about us is the same because we got into the same artistic tribe. And so I can trust that. And a lot of that is the willingness to rip our rib cages open and hand our heart to the other person. And at the end of the day, if that's what we're willing to do up here, we can get to extraordinary quicker than I can at other theaters.
I might actually just ask the audience. I'm just looking at time here. If anybody has a question, you want to raise your hand. We'll take a few questions from the audience. Yes, this gentleman here.
I'd just like to ask about this mysterious process of access to the ensemble, and which requires spreadsheet and sex and all kinds of things.
Not required.
Thank you so much for repeating that. I feel bad that I made a joke. I just want to clarify that was way in the early days.
That was like the first 6 months.
Yeah. I should not have made that joke. But it's access to, for my understanding, is that it is whomever is additive to the culture, and that should not be dependent on age, race, gender, orientation, all those things. Now, of course, we have at this moment, a majority homogenous ensemble. I think that we're working on diversifying age, orientation, gender, race. But in my opinion, if someone is an extraordinary artist and if they are additive to the culture, then Steppenwolf wins.
I just want to ask you a couple of little things just about this production that we're thrilled to have at the Town Hall Theatre, True West. So that was kind of one of the seminal production in Steppenwolf's history. I think it was 1982 or 1981 when it happened. And Randall, I don't know if Randall here or not, but Randall Arney, who is directing the piece, as you mentioned earlier on, was the artistic director at the time, and he's back revisiting. So I know the company doesn't generally tend to revisit productions. So why was this particular, apart from it being a brilliant play, was there a particular motivation for that? Do we know?
Can you take that?
It was programmed before.
Yes.
So we didn't program the show. But as I remember, they were. There comes a point of the season, every season, where you're trying to fill a slot in a programmatically, and I think that it would always come up, every year. Steppenwolf should do a revival of something. We should consider one of the early plays or one of the seminal plays that based Steppenwolf what it is, and I don't think they found the right one, and the opportunity just hadn't presented itself. And then I think this year, sort of this particular year, it all came together from what I remember. They needed a 4-person play, and True West was on the list, and then they said, okay, if we're going to do True West, how are we going to do it differently? was how we're going to re-envision it, reimagine it, and so they did it. We did it with John and Amir as the leads, and so and originally Frank Guinan, who done it in Chicago, was supposed to do it here. He did it 40 years ago. Yeah, 40 years ago to the summer. So he did it then, and so he came back to play that part again. And then Randall Arney, who's our director now, the aforementioned former artistic director, he replaced him then, and he's replaced him now. So he replaced
40 years.
40 years ago. Yeah. I think there's something really cool, though, about, because we are now a multi-generational company, right? About now having the next generation of artists inhabit these shows that were seminal to our founding days, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something really exciting that there is audiences in Chicago and I suppose around the world have their window into Steppenwolf, and it's usually through the people, right? And as Audrey and Glenn have shared so eloquently, right? There is a deeper thing there that connects these amazing artists. And so to see it anew with the next generation and to see that same lightning and verve on stage is very exciting. It was very exciting to Chicago audiences to see when the show went up. And I think is one of the reasons we were so excited to bring it back to the Galway International Arts Festival, right? The next generation of Steppenwolf.
And we're so thrilled to have you here. Can we talk just a little bit more, just sort of you alluded to, just in terms of the shape and face of Steppenwolf. So how representative is the ensemble now of Chicago or of America, and how challenging is that in terms of trying to address that profile?
We have work to do, and we've done a lot of really great work, and we have work to do. For example, I just want to take 1 second to make sure that I'm answering this really. There are certain communities in Chicago, whether it be ability, ethnicity, background, that are not represented in our ensemble currently. And I think we would love, in theory, to have the ensemble truly reflect the demographics of Chicago. And that reflection needs to have a level of artistic excellence that is representative of Steppenwolf standards. And so that is going to take us time. And something that I saw, that I think we see, is that sometimes people are trying to be so radically inclusive that they are then centering themselves to be so inclusive, and then they're disrupting the ecosystem of what they're bringing to society, right? So this is to say, I think we have a lot of work to do, and I don't think that work is going to end. But I think Glenn and I together in particular, alongside Brooke's partnership, we're set up to have that reflection be a little bit more representative of truly Chicago. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that, Glenn?
Yeah, I would just say that everything Audrey said, the question you asked a second ago about revisiting shows, I think that Steppenwolf is 46 years old now. I want to say 46. So we're just at that point where we can revisit shows, where different generation of community members have seen. They might have seen the True West, in 1981 or 82, and now we get to show it to a new audience. So I think in the same way, the sort of maturation of Steppenwolf has been alongside the city of Chicago, and I think everything that's happened in the world over the last, 2 years, 3 years, but 5, 10 years has sort of been emblematic of the shift that Steppenwolf has taken, even going back to Martha Lavey, who was the artistic director for 19, 20 years. And so she recognized something in terms of diversification of Steppenwolf that she initially started, where she went, hey, we need to be more emblematic of what the city of Chicago looks like. So it's not a conversation we just started yesterday. It's something that we've been looking at, thinking about, making active. And also there's also the notion of, you don't want to just open the door and be not intentional about how you're, Terrell Alvin McCraney, one of our ensemble members, who's a dynamic writer and producer, he often says, you want to invite people to the table, but you also want to set a place for them. You want them to feel like they've been invited to this great party, not essentially to tick off boxes, right? Mm-hmm. To say, hey, all right, we did the thing, and now everybody's good to go. And then the folks who get into the room, they say, well, you haven't made a place for me. You haven't made sure that I'm safe and I'm comfortable, and my ideas, thoughts, and things that I'm after have been accounted for as well. So yeah, I think everything Audrey just said.
I just wanted to ask you about Steppenwolf's partnerships and with another ensemble member, Tracy Letts, who is an incredible actor, incredible writer. And the last show I saw in Steppenwolf, I think it was in 2018, was The Minutes, which is now on Broadway, which is a remarkable piece. So it's amazing that he has, I suppose, stayed so true to the ethos of Steppenwolf when Hollywood would lure and Broadway would lure. But so can you just tell us a little bit about that production? And that's currently still running on Broadway, I think.
Sure. Do you guys want to
Say a little bit about the production?
About The Minutes?
It is excellent.
It's all those things. It's all those things.
It's great. Got nominated for a Tony. Yeah, we're doing good. Stephen was great.
What's not to love?
Yeah.
But I also wanted to say, just because you are in Broadway, in Broadway, and you're also in Galway, how important is touring to the company?
I think the international Steppenwolf is, as we've discussed, right? Steppenwolf is very rooted in being a Chicago theater. There's something about the ethos of our city, right? We are a city in America that is grounded in our authenticity. And I think that is very much reflected in the work that we do on stage. And that over time, not only because our artists are itinerant and are based across the country, but also because the act of sharing and exchanging, in some cases, our work with other places around the country and around the world. I think from my perspective, and from the artistic perspective, I think I welcome you all to lean in there. But it is very fulfilling. It's very fulfilling because I am a firm believer in the power of the arts to bridge the gap in ways that a lot of other diplomatic muscles don't. Right? I think that that a lot of leaders refer to the arts as sort of a soft power, right? The ability to go and to break down barriers or perceptions of what other cultures or people are like, and to unite us instead of dividing us, right? It is one of the only places where you can go and sit in a room with people who have clearly incredibly divergent opinions, ride the roller coaster of a work, and in our case, oftentimes we hold up a mirror. And the response and the push-pull of the artist and the audience is very different in the States than it is abroad. And Glenn, you, with Downstate, I'm sure the difference between your performance in Chicago and your performance in the UK, particularly with that work. I don't know if you can speak directly to...
Yeah, my performance was amazing. There was I remember we did it in Chicago, and
just to say, so Downstate was a play about sex offenders.
Pedophilia.
Yes. It was about sex offenders living in a group home in downstate Illinois, the state Chicago is in. And we did it in Chicago, and I remember before Anna programmed the play, the theater was very reticent because of the subject matter, and we had folks ready to at the end of the show to be like counselors or facilitators around conversations around sex offenders and pedophilia. And I remember we did it the first night, and we got a standing ovation, and people loved it. And we were like, "Oh shit, this is," and it's a comedy. Also, I should add that it's a dark comedy. And so our fears were assuaged very quickly, and then we thought, okay, now we're going to take it to London, and maybe they'll hand us our asses, and it was the same. People loved it. They don't give standing ovations every night in London, though. They do this. And I was told that's a standing ovation. So, but yet culturally, we were unsure of how it would travel, and I think that for us as an ensemble, we're essentially an ensemble theater, and we look to do shows pretty often that have that are around themes that really push our audiences and get a lot of us on stage at the same time. So we're in constant conversation with the community, and where the Wayne Gretzky has a famous quote, "Skate to where the puck is going to be as opposed to where it's at." And so I think we try to do that as much as we can. And that was one of those plays that really was emblematic of that.
Yeah.
I'm just watching the Marianne.
Just a quick question. You mentioned that you come from the Steppenwolf School. Sorry. You mentioned earlier that you come from the Steppenwolf School into the ensemble. What is that? Or is that something that like a precursor to being in the ensemble, or where you get indoctrinated into Steppenwolf, or what way does it work?
No, the school is so Steppenwolf. I want to say in 2000 or 2000, is it like 99? 99? Like 1999 started the school at Steppenwolf, and essentially it was the brainchild of one of our founders, Jeff Perry, and someone else. Was it Jeff and Anna Shapiro, and they wanted to sort of start a school that was that sort of encapsulated within its structure the Steppenwolf ethos, and that purely based in ensemble work. And so they started a summer program that has lasted all the way up until now. We stopped last year because of the pandemic, and we just couldn't be in person. But we still have this school at Steppenwolf, and that was how I first got my introduction to Steppenwolf. I was a young actor and auditioned for the school and got in, and I think Audrey did the same.
Okay. It's just after 2:00, so I'm just conscious of time. So thank you so much. It's been a joy talking to you, and as I said, it's a pleasure having the company in Galway. And I want to give a little shout out to Laura, Glenn, and JR, who are up there, who are long-standing Steppenwolf members, and they've been to Galway many, many times, and it's great to welcome you back. So True West is running at the Town Hall Theatre right the way through the festival. Book now. And we look forward to seeing you all there. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much.